It's very easy to fall into a trap like that and to think, oh, but once we're married, it's going to be different. It won't be. Your relationship is as it is now, and marriage changes nothing about what happens in the relationship. The dynamic between you won't change. Sex life won't change. Only if those things are all good should you contemplate marriage. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Single Girl's Guide to Life, your weekly guide to single life living in your 20s, 30s and 40s. I'm Chantel Dyson, a love and life coach, helping you to get your single life confidence before you go back to dating so that eventually you can find the right man for you in dating. And today's episode goes a little bit further than just dating. It's also an episode I think some of you are going to dislike me for. I did some polls in preparation for this, and I already know there's a ton of you that are not going to see it from my perspective for once. For once, actually. I don't know how often you don't agree with me. I don't know how often you think she's well off with this. I have a feeling today there's going to be a few of you thinking, a few of you wanting to say your piece and justify back. But I want to offer you this unique perspective around the topic of marriage. And if you've seen today's title, you'll know that I am exploring the idea and in some ways advocating for being very careful about committing to marriage. Marriage is our societal norm of the value and the representation of love. That if someone is willing to marry you and goes through with that, that is the ultimate declaration of love that there possibly could be. Now, I don't hate love. I think love is beautiful and that we are allowed to want that. We should strive for loving interactions with everybody we encounter, and that if the world was just a bit more loving in general, it would be quite a nice place to be all the time. And it can't be that way. However, marriage is one of these things that is part of that trajectory. You'll know all too well that trajectory. I have been married, I did it for a year, and I will go into some of that experience and how it shapes now the way that I look at marriage. But it is one of these things that we should be encouraged to think about it very carefully, because I don't think there's a much stronger action in life, thing that you should do, that is so clearly given as getting married. Children talk about it. They know about it from a very early age, and they actually perceive relationships in that way. They don't necessarily know the nuance of boyfriends and girlfriends, of fiancés, of being exes. They understand the idea of getting married and living happily ever after, and we all know why and where that stems from. And therefore it's not something that we massively question. At times, it seems like we're all just headed that way, when in actual fact, more and more relationships are tending away from marriage. The marriage rates in the UK have been getting lower, so have the global marriage rates. According to the Office for National Statistics, there was a 6.4% drop in marriages between 2018 and 2019, the largest annual decrease since 2012. We are seeing less and less people get married, and I don't know all of those reasons. It costs a lot to do that. But I think it's also something we should also think carefully about. Marriage is the legal document of two people coming together. It involves the law, an official piece of paper that says you're tied to one another forever. There is not another legal contract that I am aware of that lasts your entire life. A mortgage takes up a good chunk of it, but it's still not lifetime. And whilst, yes, your parents commit to having you for your lifetime, there is a point at which you are independent and free of them, and they have less responsibility towards you as parents and can distance themselves. But a marriage literally lasts forever. And whilst you can say, and there are options to get out, a divorce, that is easier said than done to navigate at times. This all depends on who you're married to and how they react, if you ever feel that you need to leave or if they decide that you need to leave. Because the things they don't teach you about marriage are the entitlements. And sometimes these entitlements are good. I will balance this discussion with why marriage is beneficial, but I want to be really clear as to the question around what marriage really means. When I polled some of you guys on Instagram, I said, do you have intentions to get married? Of the people that answered, percentage-wise, 35% said yes, 28% maybe, 13% no, and 24% said, don't know. So we've got a skew towards yes at 35%, 24% removing themselves, no at 13%, so not that many, that being definitively no, and then 28 maybe. I then asked if they had been married or not before. So of my audience and the people that answered the poll, only 16% had been married before, and 84% of those that answered hadn't been married before. And then I started to explore why it was that people felt that they wanted to get married. So the unanimous reason, I would say unanimous, it was the majority reason, 51%, is that that's what love is. That's what love and commitment is demonstrated through. And I was disappointed in that poll. And I'm not disappointed in the people. It's one of those moments where I have the curse of knowledge, where I experience firsthand that I have experienced something that has definitively made me see something different and has changed my entire view of it based on being married and getting divorced, that I do not see, and I have broken the attachment to the idea that being married is actually the truest form of love and commitment. Because I can tell you that that piece of paper can mean absolutely nothing as well. So while some people are looking at that going, oh my God, that piece of paper that we sign, and that's the thing that means that you're married, by the way, that is the ultimate declaration of love and commitment, I can tell you also means nothing at all. It's a piece of paper with your signature on. And your relationships with other people should go much further than someone say, I commit to being with you through sickness and in health. Because just like we treat it in dating, someone can say so many good words to us, say they'll be there for us, believe in us, want to support us through the good and the bad, through thick and thin, through sickness and in health. And then when it comes to it, they're not there and don't show up in the way that we really need. And you might go, yeah, I'd have checked that there before. This is a lifelong commitment. That contract is forever. And the get out clause requires the other person to agree to it. And if they don't, there is a whole process to go through that is not cheap. This is the important bit to understand. But let me focus on the first bit. I currently have been dating my boyfriend for 7.5 months. And when I look at the love and commitment that is shown in that relationship, I know that I don't need any piece of paper. I don't need any wedding celebration. I don't need any declaration of love in that sense to know any more than I did than when I was married. And my marriage and my relationship when we got married was not bad. It may not have been as true as I wanted it to be in the sense of what I now know and understand love to be, but it wasn't bad either. So it wasn't like I was being abused or that there was lots and lots of things that were wrong. There were little things that added up that I'd previously spoken about in episodes, but instinctively it was the wrong thing. But I know that piece of paper doesn't mean, the ring on your finger doesn't mean anything compared to being contacted about good news, having my day shared with someone, having someone that's going to be there when I'm upset, being able to get through the conflict and the discussions that we have that are not so positive all the time, because that's the reality of relationships, especially when it's so together. I wouldn't say I'd never not get married again, but my reasons for it are not because that's what love and commitment is. I feel committed to that person. I feel more committed to that person than I did when I was in a marriage. I feel more love. I give more love than I ever did when I had a piece of paper and a ring. So, to me, that is not the only form of love and commitment. There are lots of things that you can do, and there will be different things that you will accept. And it's okay to want to get married. Please let me disclaimer. I just want you to make sure that you know why you want to do it. Because if you think it's, oh, this person's going to love me forever, oh my goodness, it doesn't matter about that piece of paper at all. That piece of paper couldn't matter less. A person is only going to love you forever, inverted commas, if they love you forever. If they continue to show up in different ways, if they continue to love you as you grow and change, and vice versa, you love them as they grow and change, because you will not stay the same throughout this relationship. You will change. And the people that maintain marriages over time happen to change at a similar rate and in a similar direction, a direction that doesn't allow them to diverge too far. And in your 20s, even in your 30s, there's still divergence. Otherwise, you need to converge in. And that's what's going to happen as you grow and if you manage to stay together for a long time. Now, that brings me on to statistics, which is when I asked The people that had said no, I said, what are your reasons? Was one of the reasons I put the inevitability of separation. I didn't explain it, but 17% of the people that answered no, I wouldn't get married, was because of the inevitability of separation. 50% or so of marriages end in divorce. So you've got a flip of a coin as to whether your relationship is going to last in marriage. And of marriage, of the ones that stay married, 25% of those people are unhappy in their marriage. So that means that only 75% of the people that are married are actually married and happy, which means that there is a bigger majority of people that end their marriage or in an unhappy marriage when you combine those two together. It's more likely that you're going to be in one of those two categories than you are in the happily married category. Now, that doesn't mean that you won't be one of those ones in the happily married category, but every single person that gets married believes they're going to be in the happily and married section, yet a bigger majority of people end up in the unhappily married section or end up divorced section. No one that got in those two sections thought they were going to be in those sections. Everyone thinks they're going to be the ones in the happily married section. And I would put bets on, and I don't know this because I don't know if the research exists, I don't even know if it's even been looked at, but I imagine the people that are in the happily married section do not hold their marriage to the piece of paper, but to the actions that are shown every day. And they have a deeper sense of what it means to be loved. And those that have done it potentially for superficial reasons, because it's what you do. It's tradition. Might end up in the divorced or unhappily married section. Because what are your real intentions behind it? Do you really want to get married? What's the benefit? And if this is the only thing that shows love and commitment to you, then what's happening day to day? What are you accepting? Are you actually seeing love and commitment? Or do you just have someone by your side to make sure that you're not lonely? It's very easy to fall into a trap like that and to think, oh, but once we're married, it's going to be different. It won't be. It won't be. Your relationship is as it is now, and marriage changes nothing about what happens in the relationship. Yes, piece of paper and a ring. That's it. The behaviour won't change. The dynamic between you won't change. Sex life won't change. Only if those things are all good and that you're happy with everything exactly as it is, should you contemplate marriage. Now, another reason that some people said that they wanted to get married was because of some of the benefits, financial, practical, and so on. And I am more on board with this point of marriage. There are some clear advantages to getting married. Now, there are some that you can achieve without being married. So financially, it's obvious to most people that, for example, if I was living in this space with another person, I don't have to be married to them, but if I was living with another person in this space, we would not get the 25% discount on the council tax, but it would go up to 100% and we would be sharing that, so 50%. We wouldn't use that much more heat and electricity and water, so the electricity bills, the gas bill, the water bill would be halved. The mortgage would be halved. All of that would cost less and we would have more disposable income between the two of us. That said, should I then want children, and we discussed that we want that, we would have to build a bigger home. And you have more buying power when you've got two people working and at that point with no dependents, and you go to buy a house. It's more feasible. I wouldn't be able to buy a house much bigger in this area than a 2-bed for what I was able to get. 3-bed, I can't imagine any 3-bed apart from one that needed a good amount of work would I have been able to get on what I was allowed to borrow. And that's okay. But if there was another person with me, like I did with my ex, we had a 3-bedroom house with an annex and a big garden and a garage. I don't have those things now. And that's, a practical difference and a financial one. But it goes a little bit further even when you're married. When you're married, you're able to share some of the taxable income between the two of you as a partnership. So that if someone's allowance hasn't been used up, you can move it between the two. You also have benefits that can be used in terms of childcare, child benefit, all dependent on the two people that are involved that can allow you and entitle you to more. Further to that, for example, I have a teacher's pension. It's not the biggest, but had I stayed in teaching, it would have been great. The teacher's pension, if it even exists by that point, but assume it does, it's great. It's worth a lot when you stay in it, but there's a whole spousal payment so that I would get my pension if I start my pension, but when I passed away, some of my pension would go to my spouse. And I'm not married to the person I'm living with, they don't get it. Not in the same way. And there may be other conditions like this that mean that actually marriage is needed. And you have to look at it as knowing that, or thinking that, does the benefit of marriage practically outweigh the possibility of the divorce or unhappy marriage? Because if there's a 50-50 chance you're going to get divorced, which does cost money, by the way, then you're going to need to think, well, okay, at least we saved that much money during that time. And that can seem a bit like, well, that's so detached from what love is. I'm sorry, but standing and signing a piece of paper with the law, a contract, isn't love to me. That isn't love. Go and have a celebration that looks like a wedding by all means, but do not sign that legal piece of paper unless you're absolutely certain that the benefits of signing a long-term contract outweigh the possibility of the divorce and the cost of that. Now, on the note of costs, let's look at this. Hitch.com always do a review of how much the average wedding costs. And I know about this because when I got married, I was reading about budgets and we needed to know where to allocate and to save money and to go what we're going to spend, what we're going to try and save on. Now, the average cost of the wedding in the UK was £18,400. Now, you can be like, well, I would never do anything that costs as much as that. Honestly, if you've never been married before, never tried, don't have friends that have spoken about this, the minute you mention the word wedding, expect that price to skyrocket. I did a lot of things by hand on my own. Don't get me wrong, we still hired a beautiful venue. I had a lovely dress. But I cut costs on as many things as I possibly could. I designed the wedding invitation myself, got them printed, had a great time doing that, obviously. But no matter what, it costs money. And if you're going to have food, a band, you're looking in thousands no matter what. You know that anyway. You can do some on 10 grand and some are going to be 30 plus. That's going to happen. It's an average. But that's how much it costs to get married. So would you rather have 18 grand toward a house that you can just live together on, or 18 grand towards supporting your child, the first one that you have together? Or would you like to spend it on a wedding? And it's definitely thinking about weighing up that. Now, if you are going to get married and you want to do it for all the right reasons, then go do it on your own and have a small party celebration and don't mention the word wedding to anyone and maybe you can get away with it. Either way, it's still going to cost you a bit, but you could significantly slash that cost. What is next then important? According to moneyhelper.org.uk, when they published an article in 2021, they have that 42% of marriages now end in divorce, but it's also worth knowing, they say, that the average cost of a divorce in the UK stands at £14,561 in legal fees. I bet you didn't think it was as much as that to get divorced. Now, this will have a lot of factors to it. It talks about legal fees and lifestyle costs. Let me be really clear. Depending on how many orders you need arranged as part of the process of divorcing and how much time you need from a solicitor to consult, to advise you and to sort out paperwork, will change that price. I am lucky that it did not cost us as much as that. However, the timing of our decision and then having to sell the house did cost us in exit fees, for example, on the mortgage, which was a good couple of £1,000s. Luckily, there was enough equity in the house to cover that. So actually, if I really look, I didn't even see that money. So to me, it doesn't exist. It's not like it really happened. But that would have been a significant amount of money in terms of us getting divorced. We had some legal fees to sort out, but luckily we stayed fairly amicable. I mean, still doesn't talk to me and that's not a problem. But in terms of negotiating what we needed to do, the house got sold, the fees were covered by the equity, I covered the cost of the divorce, we had a financial order to make sure that we were financially separated, because if you don't, you can still have financial legal ties to your ex and they can be entitled to money that you come into later on. And no, thank you. So we had that cost, which it was done in parts. Solicitors is weird, so I can't remember exactly. It was over £1,000, but it was less than £2,000. So ours was not as high as the average. Plus, as mentioned, you have to pay for the divorce. That costs money. But if you've then got children involved, maybe you're going to go to mediation to try and resolve this instead of going through a lengthy battle. But sometimes, whether it's children or not, you do mediation, which is not cheap, might I also add, because you have to have 2 individual meetings, then you start having your meetings. Costs and adds up. If that works, then that can save you money. If that doesn't work, though, you've paid for that, and then you've also got to pay for a lawyer as well. 50% of marriages end in divorce. You've paid 18 grand on average for your marriage, and then at some point you've got to be prepared to lose 14 to 15 grand on a divorce as well. So whilst we talk about the financial benefits of getting married again, please be very aware of the financial cost to getting divorced. Thankfully, they do now have the no blame divorce. Previously, when I was getting divorced, you had to blame someone. They have now introduced the no blame divorce, so that it doesn't mean that you have to literally write a list of things that you said the other person did to be able to justify leaving. It just has to be enough for the court to say, yeah, okay, it seems like a reasonable reason that you're getting divorced. There's this whole section of like 6 months where you have to wait to make sure that you don't change your mind. They give you that time in there. And all that time, who knows what's going on with your housing situation? If you've got the same house and you can't sell it, then you're both still in it. If you can sell it but there's not enough equity in it, then you're starting at ground zero when you get back out. You might not even be able to sell it because there's no equity in it, and you're separated and divorced, and not only does it cost you that in terms of money, but now you're living with your ex, probably someone that you might not be able to stand and certainly don't want to be living with. And that's really difficult. And obviously at a certain point we have to commit, or we feel that we should commit to someone, but it is about this level of certainty. I was lucky that I had somewhere to go when we were selling our house. I stayed with my mum. Not everybody's parents have space for you to just up and come back home. You could say, well, I could rent. Well, I can tell you, my mortgages, both of them, are cheaper than any rental for the same equivalent that I've ever known. And you might go, yeah, but you pay more for insurance, or you pay more for keeping the upkeep of the house. Maybe, but at least my assets are going up, and it counteracts any of that. And that's just all to do with how we see money. Renting's not the worst thing in the world. But at the time, when I hadn't got the money out of the house, when I was still running the big car that we had, and that debt was in my name and not in his name, and it was all trying to change it. Divorce is ag. Breaking up with anyone that you've been with long term is ag. But when you have to get divorced and do it viably, then you are dealing with legal stuff, because you signed a legal piece of paper to say you wanted to stay with this person forever, and now you want to get out. And so you've got to employ people legally to help you do that and do it right. And if you want to get married, please do, and have that intention. But please be very, very aware that this is not just a declaration of love and commitment. This is a legally binding contract, that the law is involved with your marriage, and that you can't just leave. Now, another benefit to bear in mind is, for example, if you're going to have children in the relationship, the woman is going to give up her time, even just to birth the children, right? Even if it's just being more tired for 9 months, but obviously taking off some time prior to the birth, and then hopefully you take something like 3 to 6 months off as a minimum, if not the full 9 to 12 months, if you can afford it. That, whilst it's wonderful to do, and it is, it's lovely to have time off work, it will have an impact on your career. And that is a choice that you made, don't get me wrong. And for every child that you have, subsequently, you are set back for roughly a year in terms of your progress. And I don't think that that's unfair to do. If you've not been in the workplace for a year and you've not been progressing, then understandably, you might not be put up for that promotion. You might not have developed the skills of that promotion. You might not be at the same level that other people you used to be at the same level were. That's understandable. However, in the partnership of marriage, if you've chosen to do that, you are entitled to 50% of any of the marital assets that are within the marriage. So if you did decide to split, and you had taken out 3, 4, 5 years with pregnancies and going part-time, and you don't earn as much as your partner, you would be entitled to 50% of the assets in that house, regardless of what you inputted during that time. That's a beautiful advantage of marriage. And anything else, by the way. Savings that your husband had put away, 50% is yours. Investments they've made, if they're that kind of person, 50%. No matter what you earned or didn't earn during that time, 50%. And the same goes for him if you're the earner. And if he's the stay-at-home dad that doesn't work, just because he's not working doesn't mean that he's not given access to money. If he's doing the childcare, then he would be entitled to 50% of any savings that either of you have, any assets that either of you have. Unless you have prenuptials and you have an agreement that protects some of your assets that you might have accumulated before, but quite often, usually it all goes into one bag and you share it out at the end. Now, you can sometimes convince a court to award slightly differently, but guess what? That's going to cost you money to convince someone. You're going to have to employ a lawyer to do it, unless you can mediate and agree in mediation. The mediator's job is not to decide. It's for mediating between the two of you to help you both decide on what you each get. But 50-50 is usually where it's at. And that is a benefit of marriage. If either of you are going to have kids and give up time for the children, then protecting the other person financially, regardless of what they've put in for the entire marriage, is useful. And you have to be careful actually the other way round, that if you move into someone's house, so if someone moved into here and they paid me to live here, but the name on the title deeds of the house remains me, that person has no right to my house, which is good in the sense that I am protected. But that person might have been under the impression that they would be. Now, this is from what I have read online. Let me disclaimer. I am not a lawyer. This is what I've understood as reading a part of the process when I was part of the process, and what I've read online and understand in terms of protecting myself in the future, in what I want to do going forwards, because I have to decide, do I want to get married to someone? And I sit and I think and I go, what reason do I do it? Because this isn't what love means. The other reasons I had was tradition. I'm not a traditional person. Does it seem like a natural step before family? 60% of you said so. And benefits of money, 26%. I think that's the only reason that would convince me if I thought that was going to outweigh the potential cost of divorce. The rate of divorce goes up if you've already been divorced once before. Why? Because it's something you've done before and you know you can get through. So I think it's just like a normalised process, and you're not willing to stay if you don't need to. / is it because there might have been repercussions and damage from a divorce that therefore means that there might be more of an inclination to get divorced again? Maybe that's it. That's speculation. Other reasons that people said that they wouldn't get married again is that they just don't believe in it. So wouldn't get married again, wouldn't get married in the first place. Just don't believe in it. And 39% was because of previous experience. I think being someone that's been through it, you do learn from it and you become aware of what people are entitled to. And I do look at it and go, I dodged a bullet there, because divorce can be messy. It can be difficult because both people are stressed in that scenario. It was still stressful, but I'm thankful that it went through as simply as it possibly did. We separated our assets within 6 months. We were completely financially separate in our own sense of the word by then. So we had sold our house, everything in it had been separated. We'd sorted out the car payments and finances and separated that out. And other than legally applying for divorce, which we didn't do until during the first lockdown, we were separated. And we were just going to wait it out for the 2-year thing. Because there's 5 ways that you used to be able to get divorced. One was blaming someone, and the others was to do with infidelity, being separated for 2 years, someone not being around for, was it 5 years? And you just didn't know where they were. It's a long time to have to wait. And there was another one as well. We were just going to wait the 2 years and then apply after that and show that we had lived separately. But we wanted to sort it out quicker. And other than a little few discussions during the financial order of who was going to pay what and why we even had to have a financial order, but I was like, we are having a financial order because no thanks. I'm not having any financial tie to anybody else. If we're separated, thank you. That was it. So really I lived separately from him within months, but didn't even have to interact with him a lot until that lockdown point. And even then it was sporadic whilst we were contacting pension agencies to find out how much we had, how many savings we still had, and making sure that finances looked even. The court have to see that everything's been distributed evenly and fairly, and they will change it if they don't agree. And it went through. And since then, other than a little bit of contact with the dog, but that's mostly gone through his parents, that was it. I was done. But these battles can take time. And the one thing that you want to be able to do if you are with someone is, if you are leaving someone, particularly a divorce, is usually get away. Now, in some cases where it's a bit more amicable and you're like, no, look, this is just not working for both of us. Let's see if we can live here until we can sell the house. It's not the end of the world. But please be aware that marriage has a likelihood or a 50-50 chance of ending in divorce. Within that, even those that are married, not everybody's happily married, so it's worth contemplating that. Marriages cost money. Divorces cost even more money on top of that. And yes, there are benefits to getting married in terms of some financial and practicalities, but it's not necessarily the way to show true love and commitment. It's certainly not the only way. Please make sure that whatever decision you make about marriage, that your relationship that you are one day in, if you're not already in it, is so full of love and certainty of commitment that you do not care about marriage. Marriage for me would be a very private affair if I ever do it again. It would be a logical reason that sat behind it. It would not be a loving reason. That doesn't mean I won't celebrate my love for whoever I'm with in the future, but assuming it's who I'm seeing now, I show them love every single day. I do not need to wear a ring to demonstrate that. I don't need a piece of paper. I don't need a registry with the law to say that I am committed to this person. They know that I'm committed to this person. I show up for them. They show up for me. It is mutual love, mutual respect, and I don't need that marriage. I do not care. It's not an end goal. And to think it will change anything or make anything better or validate anything doesn't seem right to me. As I said, I don't think everyone's going to like what I've had to say in this episode. But at the same time, going through divorce and talking to people that have gone through divorce, we always go, why is this not spoken about more? Because we don't want divorce and weddings to seem bad. But it's the truth. It's some of the elements and the things that you actually should be thinking about if you do ever decide to get married, and not to just go with it because everyone said that that's what it's all about, that what this world is all about is getting married. There's an industry built on it because on average people's weddings cost £20,000. There were 350,000 weddings forecast in 2022, and if we imagine that the average was a mean, we're going to do average 20,000 times 350,000, 7 million. There's a lot of money going through that system. It would be a wonder why we would discourage anybody to get married at all. Sorry to the wedding industry and anyone that's in it that I'm currently like switching people off of the idea of engaging with that. But it's definitely something worth giving more than just a simple thought of that's what we're going to do next because everyone says so. I know you want to be one of the ones that stays happily married, and I'm sure some of you will be because you're going to get yourselves in the right kind of relationships to do so. But please be aware that you're entitled to change and want different things at a certain time, even when you have a good relationship. And it might not cost you as much to get divorced, and you might be able to pull money purses back on a wedding if you did get married. Just something to think about. Be aware of what marriage really is, legally speaking, and also how some of the decisions that you make, particularly if you build a family, what you're entitled to if things don't go right, and protecting yourself. It's important to do. No one teaches us these bits at all. And you just need a base level of understanding. Make sure you've had discussions about what might happen if that was to happen in the future. You don't want to taint it with that, but you'd only need to present the stats and say, look, it's a 50-50 chance that this might not work between us. So should we put this in place? Do I need a prenup? Do I want to protect some of my assets? What's going to happen if we do have children? Make this part of the conversation you have when you're at that point, but keep it in mind for when you come to it. I would love to know what you think. I realise now from that poll that my views are very different. The curse of knowledge. I have an experience that has changed the way I've seen it. And I think everybody sees the world the way I do. And they don't, obviously. But we forget that because we're the ones thinking and seeing the world the way that we do. I'd love to hear what you think. I'd love to hear if this has made you think anything, or if you've gone, oh my God, I never even thought of that. That's what it's here for. It's not meant to tell you off and to say, never get married. Just make sure it's the right reasons. Make sure that you are getting love and commitment in the right ways before you get married, and make sure that you're covered and protected if you do decide to take that step. Until next time, everybody, keep celebrating single life together.